Hello everyone, I'm Tally Palmer and I work at the Institute for Water Research at Rhodes University in South Africa. And the Institute for Water Research is the hub and home of the Arua Water Centre of Excellence. Arua is the African Research Universities Alliance, and I'll tell you a bit more about that later. What we're doing here is that I'm presenting the adaptive systemic approach, which is a particular approach to research that enables you to put research into a context so that it is relevant, usable, and has a lasting effect on the places where it's needed. Now, this is an open courseware course, so you're able to access it and use it in the way you choose, but it's arranged in a set of 4 modules. And this is the beginning of Module 1, the theoretical foundation of the adaptive systemic approach. And each of the modules will have 4 units. The Unit 1 is the introduction to the ASA, or the adaptive systemic approach. And this is just Unit 1.1, and there are 4 subunits to each of the units. So here we go. What I'd like you to think of first, or what I'd like you to do first, is if you can, look out the window. I just need to move over and look out. What I can see out the window is the mouth of the Bushman's River in the Eastern Cape, which comes out into the Indian Ocean between a little village called Kenton-on-Sea and another one called Bushman's River Mouth. And the river rises just up in the hills above here. It's quite a short coastal river. And I have a holiday house here that I'm living in at the moment. Now, like me, you are sitting in a place, and the piece of earth on which you're sitting is in a catchment, in a piece of land on which rain falls and where it seeps down into groundwater, into surface water, and that piece of land is called a catchment. Now, you and I and everybody else in the world lives in a catchment. It's one of the fundamental things that links us as human beings. We are dependent on both the earth for land and water, and we live in a holistic, connected way. And I'd like you to remember that as we go along through this course. So in Unit 1.1, which is quite short, I just asked the question, why have we developed this course? And the thing is that across the world, and perhaps particularly in Africa, we face intractable, difficult water problems. Now, intractable problems, or wicked problems as they've been called in the literature, are problems that are caused by the concurrent, the colliding of a number of factors that mean you can't address them by just fixing one thing. You have to look at addressing a number of things all at the same time to shift the problem towards a better space. There isn't a real solving of wicked problems. There's simply the opportunity to shift them and to shape them so that they have less severe impact on people. So let's think about what this wicked problem in the world is and why. Well, water is by nature something that connects and integrates and puts things together. And that's a huge advantage, but it also means that everything that happens in a catchment affects other things. And so water becomes this intricate reflection of what is going on between people and their landscapes and each other in catchments. And there's a difficulty because we can't have it all, any of us, anywhere. People cannot have everything at the same time. They can't profit from overusing water for things like irrigation and industrial production. They can't do that and waste water and pollute it and use it usually for economic gain and at the same time experience the aesthetic and spiritual offerings of aquatic ecosystems and water places. The biodiversity is impacted if we overuse. And if biodiversity is impacted, then the ecosystem service benefits that we get from protecting water resources goes down. So we have to choose and we have to share, because there isn't enough for everyone to have exactly everything that they want. And sharing is hard. Any of you that have children will know that you spend quite a lot of time when children are young encouraging them to share, particularly share beloved toys. And you know that they find that difficult. And actually what happens is, as soon as they're grown-ups or adults, we stop sharing and we hold on to everything we can. So sharing is hard, conflict is likely, and power and wealth are unevenly spread. And power means the chance to hang on even more tightly to the benefits that you have. And so if we're to move to a more sustainable and a more equitable system of managing and using water, we need new approaches. Now, this little booklet is called How to Think and Act in Ways that Make Adaptive Water Resource Management Practically Possible. And you can find it on this website. And it gives you a summary of some of the ideas that can be put together to describe the new approach. But this course is about the adaptive systemic approach, which is a package of these new ways of thinking into something that can be practically and reasonably practiced. So let's give you some background to who we are and how we're working. As I mentioned before, ARUA is the African Research Universities Alliance, and ARUA is host to 13 centers of excellence, and we are the Water Center. And there are some websites that you can go to have a look at who we are and who comprises the Water Center of Excellence. Now, the Water Center has a project called Water for African SDGs that is funded by the UK Research and Innovation. And using those funds, we are producing 5 different courses. And the specific aim of these courses is to have material produced by people who live in Africa for Africans, so that we have examples and experiences that are deeply founded in the African experience. Of course, people all over the world will also find them useful. And one of the things we're doing is showcasing some of the interesting wisdoms and insights that we have on this remarkable continent. So if we look at these 5 courses, this is the first one, the adaptive systemic approach. And then a different group are going to be working on producing a course on adaptive systemic approach for urban water pollution and management. Another group are going to be looking at social and economic benefits from managing large dams on African rivers. A fourth group is going to be looking at sustainable land management and landscape restoration, so as to retain ecosystem services and water security. And the last group is focusing on biodiversity, and biodiversity specifically in support of natural resource management, with a focus on the water, energy, food nexus. And this is who we are. These are the universities that comprise the Centre of Excellence. I'm from Rhodes, as I said. Then we have Addis Ababa University in Ethiopia, the University of Sheikh Anta Diop in Senegal, Dar es Salaam University in Tanzania, the University of Lagos in Nigeria, Makerere University in Uganda, and the University of Rwanda in Rwanda. 2 other South African universities are the University of Cape Town and the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And then we have 2 English partners, Lancaster University and Sheffield University. University of Sheffield. So this is a diagram of this water-centered model of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. And if we put SDG 6 right in the center, that is clean water and sanitation, which is the water resource and the services we get from water, you can see that there's a set of SDGs that are linked to water security, both primary and secondary security, that is the immediate security and some of the things that secondarily affect security, like governance, water quality and quantity, the question of cities and production, and this focus on the way in which the behavior in which we use water and manage waste and sustainable clean technologies are all to do with clean water and sanitation. But this deeply depends on how we manage the resource. And here you have links to land and climate change, to equitable governance, and all of the human relations around education, partnerships, and gender equality. So this is all about land and water protection for using ecosystem services and the systems that have adaptive capacity. When we think about land and water and people who live on land and water, which we will do, we call those sustainable, complex, social, ecological systems. Well, we call them sustainable if they are, many of them aren't, but we talk about people living on this planet as a complex social, ecological system. And if we move towards them being sustainable, then we move towards the high level SDGs of poverty and hunger. Now, that's a set of notes that you could look at afterwards that describe what I've just said in somewhat more detail. So what is the adaptive systemic approach for? Well, many people in Africa do not have fair access to water and their own natural water supplies. Many African water resources have deteriorating ecological health. And at the same time, many international aid agencies fund research to support water resource development. Now, quite often, the research that is associated with grants that come with development aid are of fairly short-term duration, maybe 3 to 5 years. And quite often, the research is undertaken and then researchers leave when the funds run out, and you have not always had time to embed the kinds of impacts you might hope from research and development that is there to enable and to support local communities. And so what we're trying to do, what we have done, is develop an approach that makes sure that the research really benefits local people in Africa. And so that development aid and development aid money that is spent on research has lasting impacts. And we've done this by putting a set of activities into 4 steps. And it's condensing this new way of thinking into 4 practical steps that can be done, so that we can present to you an adaptive systemic approach that is reliable. And it's reliable because it's grounded in strong concepts and theories. Practical, so that researchers, governments, government institutions, and local people can actually do the steps. They can actually take those steps. And that are effective, so that local people really do benefit from the research that is done. And so the next unit is going to be answering the question, why is the ASA reliable? If we go back here, that means we're going to be looking at the concepts and theories associated or that ground the adaptive systemic approach. And I look forward to seeing you in the next subunit.